Okay, guys, today we will be reacting to videos. Hold on. Let me style my hair so it looks good for the camera. Sorry. Hello, everyone. Have you ever heard of something called being super tired from not getting sleep? Okay, look right here. Do you see what this is? Guess what, guys? Guess what? I didn't sleep last night. If I did, I only got like a minute of sleep. And I still have to make it through the whole day. So I got a bunch of stuff. I got stuff to do today, kind of. But yeah. I didn't get any sleep, but there is. I mean, yeah, we'll get to the video and stuff. It is just a very important thing I need to search up. Worldwide, the average. Okay, in the United States, find that worldwide average. Wait. Oh, it's not Tim Holland. It's Tom Holland. 5'8"? What? You kidding me? The last time I searched this up, it said he was 5'7" and 3/4. He grew an inch. Holy cow! Chris Evans. Chris Evans is 5 inches taller than me. Zendaya is 3 inches taller than me. Robert Downey Wait. Yeah. Robert Downey Jr. is only an inch taller than me. Oh my god, this is a revolution, guys. This is a revolution. Okay, let me actually get to the video, though. Okay, guys, before I continue this video, this is a very long video. Because the video we are reacting to is an hour long. And, yeah. And, I still have to pause and stuff. I already ate breakfast. But we do have to pause so I can talk about things. So I'm not just doing content, so I'm actually reacting, talking about my thoughts. Anyways, we just. Okay, perfect. But yeah, let's just get to the video. I don't want to waste so much time.
TikTok, a place for dances, skits, and some of the most disturbing content ever uploaded to the internet. I made this iceberg myself, and it will only get darker as we go on. TikTok, a place for I made this iceberg myself, and it will only.
This is like straight out of the Blair Witch. Like, not even gonna lie. Wait. Oh my god, I'm so sorry, guys. Is the desktop audio not loud enough? Sorry. Okay.
Get darker as we go on. It started like any other night for 25
Hannah Stalker.
Correct. She was in her apartment, listening to music, recording herself dancing for a TikTok video. She had done this dozens of times before, completely unaware of what was.
Oh, I've heard about this one. This one actually freaks me out. Pardon me. You guys can look at what I'm doing. Okay. I don't think there's anybody outside. Oh, but wait. I'm sorry. There's something I do want to show you guys. I want to show you guys something pretty cool. In my opinion. All right. I think everybody, a good amount of people by now, have watched Superman. Now, everybody, drum roll, please. Ta-da! Yep. I got my own. Something crossed off my bucket list now. Where we put 'em over here? Keep him there. You guys just watch him to make sure he doesn't start moving like Annabelle or something. Okay, we should get back. I was thinking about doing other things, but like, you can tell I didn't get much sleep last
was
night.
about to happen. Out of nowhere, her balcony door silently slid open. At first, she didn't seem to notice, but then a man stepped inside. He didn't knock, he just stood there staring.
Please get out of my apartment right now. Get out. Get out.
Oh, no, I can't, bro. Imagine seeing that, bro. So instinct. Gotta make sure there's nothing underneath my bed.
Hello?
Did he just vanish? Oh
Some
my
people
god.
thought
Oh, that neighbor scared me. Oh.
the video might even be staged until Hannah came out with the full story. As this wasn't a random break-in, this man had been watching her for months. After the break-in, police
Months?
identified the man as Angel Moises Rodriguez Gomez, a 36-year-old who lived nearby. And as the investigation continued, a much more unsettling truth came to light. This wasn't the first time he had been near her home. For months, Hannah had noticed strange things. She had recalled seeing him near her apartment complex multiple times before, though he had never done anything to make her feel immediately threatened like this. Her balcony wasn't on the ground floor either. There was no way he could have just walked in. When the police arrived, they found Angel still inside the apartment. He hadn't left, he hadn't tried to run. It was as if he thought he belonged there. He was arrested on the spot and later
This is just
charged with burglary and stalking. The court set his bond at $20,000, a punishment that many felt was far too lenient, given what could have actually happened. As of now, there's no information about what he was sentenced to, but he was later taken into custody by US Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Ava Madry wasn't trying to be famous, at least not at first. Like millions of others, she started posting short videos of herself, lip-syncing to songs, dancing, and generally following trends. Seemingly at random, she seemed to hit the algorithm at just the right time, as by the time she was 14, Ava had gained over 1 million followers. And with that kind of attention
14. Okay.
came something most teenagers don't experience: fame. At first, Ava and her family saw TikTok as an opportunity, as she wasn't just building a fan base, she was making money too. Like many influencers, she monetized her growing
Where's my money, bro? Where's my money, bro? You guys, get me 3 million views on one of my random YouTube shorts. I'm trying to make my money. If I can make money, I can start donating things
audience
to
through
charity
brand
and
deals
stuff.
and paid interactions. But with that success came something darker. Among the thousands of comments and messages, some stood out. They weren't just from fans who liked her videos, they were from people who were obsessed. Ava had no way of knowing that one of these followers would eventually change her life. His name was Eric Rohan Justin, an 18-year-old from Maryland, and his interest in Ava wasn't exactly healthy. Eric followed her every move online, watching her videos over and over again. And he wasn't just leaving comments like everyone else, he was sending her hundreds of messages, trying to get her attention. When he wasn't getting the responses he hoped for, he tried something else, sending her money. Through Cash App, Eric sent hundreds of dollars to Ava, hoping she'd acknowledge him. But Eric wasn't
Oh my god, bro. You know, this is what some people would call desperate.
just tipping her for her content. He wanted more. At one point, he even asked Ava for personal photos, not just TikTok.
Bro. And she's like, okay, she's like 14, he's 18. Oh my god, that's a 4-year difference.
Videos, but private pictures just for him. And she and her parents agreed. For $300, Ava sold photos of herself smiling for the camera to Eric. But when Eric started asking for more explicit photos, that was when Ava finally blocked him. She figured that would be the end of it, though she was wrong. Instead of backing off, Eric became more desperate. Through rigorous searching and clues spread throughout her social media, Eric soon discovered where Ava lived. Then, on July 10th,
Bro! Arrest him.
2021, Eric put a plan into motion. At 4:30 a.m., while Ava and her family were asleep, Eric showed up at their house, carrying a shotgun. Without warning, he fired a round through the door, shattering the early morning silence. The blast jolted Ava and her family awake. This was no longer just an online...
Don't tell me this kid right here. Okay, I mean, I feel very bad that this happens, but I have a feeling her brother's gonna die.
Obsession, but Eric himself wasn't prepared for what would happen next. Ava's father, a retired police officer, grabbed his own gun and rushed towards the door. He saw Eric outside, still holding the shotgun, still trying to get inside. He knew his family was in danger, so he took action. Stepping outside, he fired his own weapon, striking Eric. The obsessed van collapsed onto the ground, and the threat was over. When police arrived at the scene, they found Eric lifeless outside the Majuri home, his shotgun still beside him. For Ava and her family, the reality of what just happened almost seemed impossible to process. A fan from TikTok had traveled hundreds of miles, stalked them, and tried to break in with a gun. If her father hadn't acted, what would have happened? But this wasn't the end of the ordeal. There was another twist. After the shooting, investigators searched Eric's phone and online activity, and what they found was deeply disturbing. He had been planning this for literal months. There were messages, notes, and a search history that showed he was obsessed with Ava and fully intended to harm her. And even worse, he wasn't acting alone. Detectives discovered that Eric had been in contact with other people online discussing Ava. He had encouraged others to harass her, and in some messages, he even hinted that he was willing to pay someone to help him attack her family. Even worse is that one of the people Eric was in contact with was a pupil at the same school Ava went to. The police...
Oh, hell no. Yo, guys, this is my last YouTube. I'm joking. This isn't gonna be my last, but guys. Okay, listen. When you're online, be careful. Alright, that's all I gotta say.
Ruled the shooting as justified self-defense, and no charges were filed against Ava's father. Madison Russo, a 19-year-old college student from Iowa, claims she was facing...
We all know this story. If you don't, I'm not gonna talk until this part's over.
the fight of her life, one that no teenager should ever have to endure.
Let me just say something. Bro, it's just messed up, bro.
According to her social media posts, Madison had been diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, a rare and aggressive disease, as well as leukemia. To make matters even worse, she said that doctors had discovered a tumor the size of a football wrapped around her spine. Her emotional TikTok videos and GoFundMe campaigns painted the picture of a young woman fighting for her life. She spoke about the grueling effects of chemotherapy and the emotional toll of her diagnosis, inspiring thousands with her resilience. She even gave speeches at universities, urging people to stay strong no matter the odds. Sympathy soon turned into action though, as over 400 people donated nearly $40,000 to help her with what they believed were overwhelming medical bills. Fellow cancer survivors and kind strangers alike wanted to support her fight. But while most saw a brave survivor, a few saw something a little bit strange. For one, her medical equipment looked wrong. In some photos, her chemotherapy port was placed incorrectly. In others, the wires and tubing she showed didn't quite match the real-life medical devices used for cancer treatments. To the average person, most of these details would have probably gone unnoticed, but to doctors, nurses, and real cancer patients who had gone through all the treatment, the inconsistencies were pretty obvious. Someone eventually tipped off the authorities, prompting an investigation into Madison's medical history. Now, gathering money under false pretenses, like faking having cancer to raise donations, is actually very illegal. Authorities also took this case very seriously because of how far her deception went. She was actively giving public speeches about her illness at colleges, whilst also appearing in local news stories. Perhaps unsurprisingly, investigators confirmed that Madison had been faking cancer. They charged her with first-degree theft, a felony in Iowa. In court, Madison pleaded guilty to the charges. Given the scale of her deception, many expected quite a harsh punishment, but in a slightly controversial decision, the judge sentenced her to 10 years of probation, sparing her from prison. She was also ordered to complete 100 hours of community service and pay $39,000 in restitution to the people she had scammed. This video is sponsored by Aura, and while TikTok is still on the verge of being banned,
Aura? Aura? Aura farm?
here's something disturbing about it. You could go to any data broker's website right now and buy any
I'll skip this stuff.
is already passion motorbikes. On social media, Taylor shared her love for riding with thousands of followers. Her TikTok videos were filled with her going at high speeds, going on group rides, and scenic road trips.
I love motorcycle, like, scenery, like, recording videos. Oh my god, they're so beautiful.
She often posted clips of herself
motorcycle
weaving through
videos are
traffic,
amazing.
and she made it look effortless. She wasn't reckless, at least not in her eyes. But motorbikes can be unpredictable. One wrong move, one small miscalculation, and everything can change in an instant. And as Taylor gained more attention online, she may have also started pushing the limits. As she wasn't riding just for herself anymore, she was riding for an audience. The evening of May 25th, 2022 probably felt like any other for Taylor Jean Strom. She, along with a group of other bikers, hit the road in
I know this story. Oh no, but it's so tragic. Who's-
engines roaring as they merged onto Interstate 95. Riding in a pack was something Taylor loved. As I said, motorbikes are unpredictable, but going on a highway with one makes it even more dangerous, even for experienced riders. Somewhere near mile marker 296, something went wrong. No one knows for sure what caused it, as maybe it was a sudden stop, maybe another rider lost control, maybe a car merged too close, forcing the bikers to react. But whatever it was, it triggered a chain reaction. One moment the group was riding smoothly, but the next, tires screeched against the asphalt and bodies tumbled into the road. Taylor was among them. She was thrown from her bike, hitting the pavement hard. Before she had a chance to move, headlights flooded over her. A Chevy Silverado was coming fast, and the driver didn't have enough time to react. Within moments, the highway was filled with flashing lights. Police cars, ambulances, bystanders stopping in shock, but there was nothing they could do. Taylor was gone. The news spread quickly. In a matter of hours, her social media was flooded with messages of disbelief. Her followers, the people who had watched her ride with such confidence, were now seeing her name in headlines. But what made her death even more unsettling was something she posted just before the crash. A TikTok video that in hindsight felt almost like a warning. The video was simple. Taylor sitting on her motorbike with a mocking caption reading, "You're gonna get yourself killed on that." But no one could have predicted how disturbingly ironic those words would become.
Oh shoot, bro! I shouldn't say stuff. No, you guys don't forget knock on wood. I know nobody knows that means anymore, but you should now. Trust me, and things like that you should know.
Chosen Terrell Hannah wasn't famous. He wasn't a viral star. He was just someone posting dance videos like millions of others on the app. But what made him different, what made him disturbing, wasn't his content itself. It was what his videos revealed without him even realizing it. While his few followers watched him dance, the police watched for something else. His clothing, his movements, and even small details in the background began to match a series of unsolved crimes. And with each new post, he had unknowingly built a case against himself until the authorities had everything they needed. He wasn't caught by a police chase, forensic evidence, or an informant. He was caught because of
You're telling me that guy. Okay, first off, I mean, okay, I don't know much about murdering stuff. Okay, but how dumb do you have to be like to kill someone and then record a TikTok where you kill them? Like, do you know how dumb that is? Right, I need a little breather. I'm gonna pause for a bit. Okay, I think I had my little break, my little breather. Oh, this is a lot to take in. This is a lot to take in. Like, bro, it's early in the morning. I wake up in the morning feeling like this is my cousin. If I did it like this.
of his own TikTok videos, and when officers finally knocked on his door, he had no idea just how much he had already confessed. For weeks, detectives had been searching for a masked suspect responsible for a string of armed robberies. Surveillance footage had given them glimpses of the man, his build, his movements, and a few key details about what he was wearing, but his face was still hidden, and the investigation had stalled. They needed something more, something concrete to tie a name to the crimes. Then, in one of the strangest twists imaginable, they found exactly what they were looking for on TikTok. Scrolling through Chosen Terrell Hannah's account, investigators were stunned. The first thing that caught their attention was a pair of white Nike shoes with red accents. The suspect in the robbery footage had worn the exact same shoes. It could have been a coincidence, but then they noticed a black backpack with a floral pattern. That same bag had been used in the robberies, visible in the security footage. Then came the final, most damning detail: his hair. In one of the crimes, a glimpse of the pinkish purple hair peeked out from under the suspect's mask. It was unmistakable. Piece by piece, the police built their case, using every frame of his TikToks they could to add to the evidence they already had. The shoes, the backpack, the hair, it was all there, hiding in plain sight. And with every post, every dance...
Oh my god, I thought he was a murderer, not... Okay.
Had unknowingly tightened the noose around himself, and soon detectives had seen enough. They knew they had their suspect. All that was left was to bring him in. On February 23rd, 2022, FBI agents and local law enforcement surrounded Chosen's home in Redford Township, Michigan. The arrest was swift, calculated, and left no room for escape. Agents arrived at his residence with a warrant, prepared for any resistance, but there was none. When they moved in, Chosen surrendered without incident. He was charged with 4 armed robberies, each carrying serious penalties. Prosecutors laid out the timeline of his crimes. Between December 2021 and February 2022, he had allegedly robbed multiple businesses, including a 7-Eleven, a petrol station, and a Dollar Tree, always brandishing a gun and demanding money. His videos were played in court side by side with the robbery footage. Chosen pleaded guilty to all 4 armed robberies. By doing so, he avoided a drawn-out trial and risk of an even harsher sentencing. In federal court, he was sentenced to 7 years in prison.
Hold on, guys. I gotta watch something really quick. Another thing from my phone. Be right back. Oh my god. This is in the why am I doing this in the morning? There's just so much to process in the morning.
July afternoon in 2021, 17-year-old Bethany Martin and her 16-year-old friend were wandering their San Antonio neighborhood when they spotted something unusual near a drainage ditch. At first glance, what looked like just some discarded clothes actually turned out to be a human body. Most people would have reacted with shock or called for help, but Bethany and her friend did neither. Instead, they took their phones out and started filming.
Alright, guys, I gotta fart really quick. I'm being so honest. I just gotta pause it so you guys know. Oh, wow. Heavenly. I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking. I ignore everything I said. But seriously, let me just reverse it a bit.
At first glance, what looked like just some discarded clothes actually turned out to be a human body. Most people would have reacted with shock or called for help, but
Almost everyone.
Bethany and her friend did neither. Instead, they took their phones out and started filming. Rather than reporting the discovery, they recorded the body. But the worst part wasn't just the filming, it was what they did next. As the cameras rolled, Bethany's friend leaned down and removed a necklace from the dead man's neck. At first, most people thought it was fake, but as viewers recognized the location and connected it to a real news report of a recently deceased man, the truth was slowly revealed. Then, someone sent the video to the police. At that point, the girls had already deleted the TikTok post, but it was far too late. Screenshots and copies had already spread, and authorities traced the account back to Bethany Martin. She admitted to finding the body and taking the necklace, claiming they later discarded it in a drainage area. Bethany was arrested and charged with theft from a human corpse, a Class A misdemeanor in Texas. Her 16-year-old friend, whose name was withheld due to her age, faced charges through the juvenile system.
So her friend wasn't her friend was probably like 14, 15 then.
There's no information about what the two actually got sentenced to, but Bethany was released on bond for $2,000. At just 18 years old, Cara Santarelli was finishing up her senior year at Northview High School in Florida.
Oh no, bro. It's like all these things with kids, bro.
Most teenagers, she used TikTok to...
Okay, listen. I'm a teenager, right? So, since I'm a teenager, like, hearing stories about other teenagers, it's just, bro, it's just sad to hear. Not gonna lie, it's just sad to hear. Everything is sad to hear, but it hurts more when it's, like, someone who's, like, teenager, my age, older, or younger. Like, that really hurts, because that means we haven't, like, fully gotten a full adult, like, hood. We've only been in our childhood. It's like, bro, never mind.
Share fun moments and connect with friends. Her videos often featured trending sounds or random clips of her daily life. But one post in particular would take on a very chilling meaning just days later. In the short clip, Cara sat in her car, recording herself with a relaxed and confident expression. The caption read, "When they tried to call me a bad driver, but I've never hit a person or an actual car." It was obviously a simple, playful post, something that you would probably forget almost instantly. She wasn't bragging or trying to be reckless. It was just a light-hearted response to the idea that she wasn't the best driver. It was a quiet Friday morning, just like any other. Cara was
Did she hit someone or did she get hit?
driving down US Highway 29, a familiar road that stretched through Florida. It was early, the sun barely rising, casting a glow over the empty highway. But Cara had no idea that someone else was on that road, someone driving the wrong way. A Chevrolet sedan was barreling towards her at full speed, heading straight into her lane. The driver...
Oh.
for unknown reasons, wasn't stopping. There were no signs of slowing down, no attempt to swerve. The two cars were on a collision course, and in an instant, there was no way to avoid what came next. The two vehicles crashed head-on with an incredible force, crumpling metal, shattering glass, and sending debris flying in every direction. The sheer violence of the crash left no room for survival. By the time emergency responders arrived, the damage had already been done.
I don't think I'm driving. I give up on driving.
Cara
Bro.
and the other driver were killed on impact. As the details of the crash spread, so did the eerie realization. As just days before, Cara had posted that joke video about never being in an accident. Now her life had ended in one.
What's what's with this, like stuff about posting? Like yeah, earlier said there's that girl on the motorcycle who's like, oh, someday you will die on that thing, die, oh, bro. You know what? Can we just not just guys? Let's just make this a trend. Don't don't quote something like, oh, this is how I'm making that. How this I've never done this before. Just don't do that. Don't do that from now on.
The irony was too
Karma
painful to
is a
comprehend.
complete.
We're now on level 3 of the Ice Burg. The Randonautica app works by generating random GPS coordinates near your location and then guiding you to places you might have never gone otherwise. But before it gives you a destination, it asks you to set an intention. You're supposed to focus on something specific, an idea, an object, or even a feeling. The app then claims it will lead you to a location that somehow relates to that thought. If you think of happiness, you'd think it would take you to a park where kids are playing or something. If you focus on sadness, you can end up near an abandoned house. Randonautica was released in early 2020, right when much of the world was already locked down. People were stuck at home, desperate for something new to do, and the app seemed like the perfect way to break the monotony. Almost overnight,
Except for it could lead you to a random murderer.
it became a sensation. TikTok and YouTube were flooded with videos of people using the app and stumbling across all sorts of strange things. At first, these stories only added to the app's mystique. It was fun, unpredictable, and just eerie enough to make people wonder if there was something more to it. But then something happened that would change everything. A group of teenagers in Seattle decided to try Randonautica for themselves. They set their intention and followed the coordinates Randonautica provided. The location led them to a rocky shoreline near Duwamish Head in West Seattle. It seemed like just another random spot, but as they looked around, something unusual caught their attention. Near the water's edge, half buried in the rocks, was a black suitcase. At first they thought it was just another piece of rubbish, maybe something washed up by the tide, but as they got closer, they noticed a terrible smell. A few of them hesitated, sensing something was off, but the curiosity got the best of them. One of the teens took out their phone and started recording as another cautiously unzipped the suitcase. Inside, they saw plastic garbage bags, tightly wrapped and stuffed into the case. The smell was overwhelming. Something was very wrong. Then the video cuts to them calling the police. They had no idea what they just stumbled upon, but they knew one thing for certain. They weren't sticking around to find out. And what happened next confirmed their worst fears. When the authorities arrived and opened the suitcase, they found human remains inside the plastic bags.
Oh,
Not long
Lord.
after, another
Bro, what were people putting human remains in bags, bro? Like, bro, is that like... No, never mind.
of remains was found in the water nearby. The scene quickly became a major crime investigation, and the TikTok video that captured the discovery started to spread rapidly. Literally millions of people watched, horrified. Speculation, of course, took over the internet, as some people believe Randonautica had somehow led the teens purposely to the body. Others dismissed it as a tragic coincidence, as after all, the app was designed to generate random locations, nothing more. Seattle police
That could be a
immediately
lie.
took over the area, treating it as an active investigation. The black suitcase was carefully collected, and the forensic teams arrived to examine the remains. Not long after, a second bag containing additional human remains was discovered floating nearby in the water. What had once been a little exciting adventure for a group of teens had now become evidence in what was clearly a brutal and violent crime. The bodies were sent for autopsy, and within days, authorities confirmed what many had feared. The remains belonged to two people, a man and a woman. Their names were soon released to the public: Jessica Lewis, aged 35, and Austin Wenner, aged 27. They weren't just two random victims, they were a couple, and their deaths have been far from accidental. Both had been shot multiple times before their bodies were discovered in the bags. The details of the case are horrifying. Jessica and Austin had been reported missing for weeks before their remains were discovered. Family and friends had been searching for them, unaware that their bodies were just sitting off the coast. But even as the public learned their names, one question remained unanswered: who had done this to them? The case had quickly become a top priority for law enforcement. Investigators retraced Jessica and Austin's last movements, looking for clues about where they had been before they had lost their lives. It didn't take long before they found their first major lead. Jessica and Austin had been renting a room in a house owned by a 62-year-old Michael Lee Dudley, located just outside of Seattle. The home, at first glance, seemed unremarkable, a modest suburban house, nothing out of the ordinary. But as the police dug deeper, they started to realize that Dudley wasn't just an average landlord, he was the last person to see them alive. Inside the house, police found something even more terrifying: bullet holes in the walls and floors, along with very suspicious red stains that had been poorly cleaned. The evidence was overwhelming. This obviously wasn't just a missing persons case anymore, this was a murder. Authorities wasted no time arresting Dudley, and when questioned, he claimed that Jessica and Austin had become too much for him to handle. He had been trying to evict them, and the tensions had been rising in the weeks leading up to their deaths. But his attempts to justify himself didn't change the facts. 2 people had been brutally executed, their bodies discarded and dumped into the water. And now, thanks to a strange phone app and teenagers recording TikTok videos, Michael Dudley was behind bars. Zachary Latham was just a teenager when he moved into his grandmother's home.
YMCA. YMCA. YMCA.
In Vineland, New Jersey. But unlike most 18-year-olds, Zachary wasn't just living a normal life. He was trying to become famous on TikTok. At first, his content seemed harmless. He posted videos about his life and his car mainly, but soon his TikTok account took a very different turn. He began recording confrontations with his neighbors, the Durham family, and posting them online for the world to see.
What are you gonna do, Karen?
That's not my name. Get my name straight. Go ahead.
You okay, Karen? Go ahead, get my tag.
Go.
Get my tag, Karen.
My name is not Karen. So get my name straight.
Get my tag, it's okay.
The Durhams had been
Why is he being so rude?
growing frustrated with Zachary's behavior. He had a habit of speeding recklessly through the residential streets, ignoring the safety of the people around him. When the Durhams, especially William Durham Sr., a corrections officer, tried to call him out on it, Zachary didn't just ignore them, he made them his content. In one video, Zachary filmed himself arguing with Catherine Durham, William Sr.'s wife, calling her a Karen and laughing at her anger. And the video blew up, drawing in thousands of comments. Some people cheered him on, while others questioned why he was provoking her in the first place. But Zachary didn't stop. If anything, the attention fueled him. He made more videos, more confrontations. He even started tagging his posts with Road to Fame, as if this wasn't an actual dispute, but a storyline in a series he was creating, and it was working. To his followers, it was entertainment. To the Durhams, it was harassment. Then, on May 4th, everything came to a head. According to reports, the confrontation began when Catherine, William Sr., and their sons, William and Jonathan, decided to confront Zachary about his behavior. The Durham parents believed that Zachary had purposely swerved his truck towards their sons whilst they were out on their bikes, and after months of tension, they were no longer willing to let it slide.
You're 18. Come on. Get out of his
Get out of my face.
Get out of his face. No.
Get out of my face.
Get out of his face. Oh, did you hit me? Did you hit me? Ow.
Get a little bigger, right?
Zachary drove home.
Oh my god, bro. I guarantee you, there are so many people who are younger than 18 who are a hell of a lot smarter than these guys. I'm younger and I'm smarter.
Armed himself with a stun gun and knife and waited. They followed him there, and that's where the situation turned violent. Outside his home, a physical fight broke out between Zachary and the Durhams. At some point, Zachary pulled out his knife, and in the struggle, he would strike William Sr. with the knife multiple times in the torso and arm, and his injuries were severe, and despite efforts to save him, the 51-year-old father would die shortly after. The entire confrontation was chaotic. When the police arrived, they took both sides into custody. Zachary claimed that he had acted in self-defense, arguing that the Durhams had come to his home intending to attack him, whereas the Durhams say that Zachary had lured them to his house, armed and ready, with the intention of creating a violent altercation. Prosecutors initially charged Zachary with manslaughter instead of murder, suggesting that they didn't believe it was entirely premeditated. In April of 2023, a jury found Latham not guilty, accepting his
What?
claim of self-defense during the confrontation.
That's a bold
If you're
lie,
scrolling
bro. I guarantee it's like all on him, bro. Why is he doing this to his neighbors? Recording them without the consent too.
TikTok a few years ago, you might have come across a creator known as Yandere Freak, with a mix of cosplay and
Oh my god. We on. if you guys don't know who this is, I'm not gonna talk through this whole part.
Humor, they had built up a significant following. Their real name was Mary Ann Oliver Snow, and they dressed up as popular anime and video game characters, acting out short skits and lip-syncing to dramatic audio clips. As their audience expanded, so did their influence. Yandere Freak became a well-known figure in certain corners of TikTok, amassing hundreds of thousands of followers. But what most people didn't realize was that behind the cosplay, a much darker story was unfolding. On the 17th of January 2021, Mary Ann Oliver Snow was hanging out in their home in Houston, Texas, along with several close friends. They had all known each other for years, and it was the kind of casual gathering they had done many times before, drinking, joking around, and just talking. But that night, something was different. At some point during the evening, Mary Ann retrieved a handgun, a Glock 19, which they claimed had once belonged to an ex-boyfriend who had left it behind. According to their later testimony, they believed the gun was unloaded. It wasn't meant to be a threat, it was just a prop in the moment, something to joke about. As Mary Ann showed off the gun, they pointed it at their friend, Helen Hastings, who was just 18 years old at the time. Laughing, she started waving the weapon around. It was meant to be a harmless, edgy joke amongst friends. But then, in an instant, the gun went off. A bullet had struck Helen in the head, and she collapsed instantly. The friends scrambled, calling 911 as Mary Ann reportedly broke down, screaming in shock. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but there was really nothing they could do. Helen was pronounced dead at the scene. When police arrived, Mary Ann immediately claimed the shooting was an accident. She said she had no idea the gun was loaded and that they had pulled the trigger without meaning to fire. According to their account, they had played with the gun before, dry firing it multiple times in the past, believing it was empty. Not long after the incident, they were arrested and charged with manslaughter, a second-degree felony in Texas. If convicted, they faced up to 20 years in prison. Mary Ann's defense was very simple. They never intended to harm anyone. They claimed to have believed the gun was unloaded and had even dry fired it multiple times in the past without an issue. That night, they thought it was just another harmless joke, but prosecutors weren't quite convinced. Anyone with a brain should know you never point a gun at someone unless you intend to shoot them. If Mary Ann had truly played with the gun before, why hadn't they checked to see if it was loaded that night? And more importantly, how had a bullet ended up in the chamber? Even if they hadn't meant to fire, handling a real firearm so carelessly was an act of gross negligence, one that resulted in the death of an innocent person. Despite the serious charges, Mary Ann was released on bond while awaiting trial. For a while, the case remained relatively unknown outside of Texas. The public had no idea that a popular TikTok creator was facing criminal charges for a fatal shooting. But as court documents surfaced and the details began to spread online, outrage started to erupt. Even after being charged with manslaughter, Mary Ann didn't disappear from the internet entirely. In fact, they continued making TikToks as if nothing had happened at all. For most people, it was deeply unsettling to see someone involved in such a tragic event acting as if it was just a minor setback. Unlike many high-profile cases, the legal process surrounding Yandere Freak's charges became somewhat of a mystery. There has been very little public information about the outcome of the case, leaving many questions unanswered. The lack of clear updates has only added to the unsettling nature of the case, leaving people wondering how someone involved in such a tragic event seemingly faded into the background. Kira Hart was a 14-year-old girl from Queensland, Australia. Sometime in March 2023, Kira was invited to a sleepover. The girl who invited her, Renisha Gretsch, wasn't a stranger. She was someone Kira knew, a so-called friend. There was no reason to say no. She arrived at the house, probably expecting to watch a film, eat snacks, and laugh with her friends. But instead, the door shut behind her, and the atmosphere changed immediately. What she thought was going to be a fun night with friends turned into something much darker. It started with simple taunting. The girls at the sleepover, the same ones who had invited her over, weren't acting like friends anymore. They surrounded her, making fun of her, and started off just by bullying her. Over the next few hours, she would experience a level of cruelty that's hard to imagine. The betrayal, the violence, and the sheer lack of humanity was made worse by the fact that they made sure to record everything. At first, Kira's friends and family had no idea what had happened to her. When she finally came back from the sleepover, she was barely recognizable. Her face was swollen and bruised, her body covered in wounds. But the full horror of what she endured wouldn't be understood until the footage surfaced online. In the video, Kira is seen cowering, crying, and begging for it to stop. But there was no mercy. The girls who were supposed to be her friends were now her tormentors, taking turns hitting, kicking, and slicing her with knives. They pulled her by her hair, mocking her and laughing, as if it were some sort of game. The video was
I'm not going to anyone's sleepover, so stop. My comments are thick.
First uploaded to Snapchat and TikTok by the attackers themselves. They bragged about what they had done, almost as if they were proud of it. But once the footage made its way onto Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, it started to spread more quickly. Despite social media platforms taking the video down, it had already been reshared thousands of times. And under the mounting pressure, authorities soon took action. The 3 girls responsible, Chloe Denman, sisters Renisha and Shania Gretsch, were arrested and faced multiple charges, including assault occasioning bodily harm and deprivation of liberty. But due to their ages, with the youngest of them being 12, it's very likely that they will not face any
The youngest was 12.
sort of heavy punishment.
Dude, they should, bro. Okay, I know that, like, we're not really supposed to charge someone as, like, an adult when they're young, but, like, doing that? That's just messed up. They gotta face a big punishment at least, though.
We're now on level 4 of the iceberg. Dino and Zara were one of those couples. Their videos, pranks, challenges, and everyday moments built a loyal audience, with fans calling them relationship goals. But social media often hides reality. On July 4th, 2024, something went terribly wrong. An argument broke out between Dino and Zara, the details of which are still unclear, but it quickly escalated into something far more dangerous than anyone could have expected. In a moment of rage, Dino allegedly pulled out a weapon, aimed it at Zara's face, and fired it. Neighbors and emergency responders rushed to the scene, finding Zara in critical condition. She was immediately transported to the hospital, where doctors worked desperately to save her life. Miraculously, she survived the shooting, but the injuries she suffered were severe. While Zara was in a hospital bed fighting to recover from her injuries, Dino was facing the full force of the law. Authorities arrested him in connection with the shooting, and he was booked into jail. Reports from the Flower Mound Police Department confirmed the details of the incident, and soon, mugshots of the once popular TikToker were circulating on the platform. And even after everything, they're back together. Recent posts show them side by side, acting like nothing ever happened. Dino was only sentenced to 10 years of probation, as his defense argued that it was purely accidental. Though that still doesn't explain the argument, why Dino would retrieve a gun and then point it at the woman he's meant to love most. Terion Ishmael Thomas, better known as Mr. Prada, had over 4 million followers on TikTok. Thomas built an audience through comedy skits that often covered very mundane topics like dating, family, and school life, with his expressive delivery making him a favourite for TikTok's For You page. But soon, his name would make headlines for something far darker. On the morning of September 29th, 2024, Louisiana authorities received a call that would set off a shocking investigation. A body had been found, dumped on the side of the road in St. John the Baptist Parish, a quiet area just outside New Orleans. The victim was wrapped in a blue tarp, his body discarded as if someone had wanted to make him disappear. When the police arrived, they uncovered a brutal crime scene. The victim was 69-year-old William Abraham, a therapist and former Catholic priest from the area. He had been beaten to death, suffering from severe head trauma that suggested a violent struggle. There were no signs of a robbery though. His wallet and belongings were still intact. Whoever had done this wasn't after money. At first, the investigators struggled to understand who could have wanted Abraham dead. By all accounts, he was a respected member of the community, known for helping people through their struggles. But as detectives dug deeper, a trail of evidence would lead them to a suspect no one expected: TikTok star Mr. Prada. Surveillance footage from the night before the discovery held a crucial clue. Cameras had captured Abraham walking into an apartment, but he would never come back out. That apartment belonged to Terion Ishmael Thomas, Mr. Prada himself. More disturbing details quickly emerged. Witnesses reported seeing Thomas dragging a large blue tarp to a car, struggling under the weight of whatever was inside. When police found Abraham's vehicle abandoned later that day, they made another discovery. Mr. Prada had been the one driving it. With the evidence stacking up, one thing was clear. This wasn't just a random attack, but what had really happened inside that apartment? And what connection did a 69-year-old therapist have to a 20-year-old TikTok star? Those answers would only lead to more unsettling questions. Detectives quickly confirmed something unsettling. Thomas had never been a client of Abraham's. This ruled out any standard therapist-patient relationship, leaving authorities searching for another connection. If their meeting wasn't professional, then what had brought them together that night? With mounting evidence, police issued a warrant for Thomas's arrest. But by the time law enforcement was ready to move in, he was already on the run. His escape didn't last long though. On the 1st of October 2024, just 2 days after Abraham's body would be found, authorities tracked him to Dallas, Texas, nearly 500 miles away from the crime scene. Police moved in quickly and Thomas was taken into custody without incident. At the time of his arrest, Thomas refused to explain what had happened that night. He didn't fight back, but he also didn't offer answers. What had led to such a brutal killing, and why had he tried so desperately to cover his tracks? Well, we might not ever find out. As of today, Mr. Prada has remained silent, and the authorities investigating the case have yet to reveal any information. Jinkid's real name is Ali Nassar Abulaban, and he was known for his TikToks that you may have actually seen before, where he pretended to be an NPC from the game Skyrim.
You try mercenary work? Might suit you.
Through these TikToks, he gained around 945,000 followers before his account would be terminated. Outside of his skits, he was just a normal guy. At least that's what it seemed like. He was married to Anna Abulaban, and together they lived in San Diego, California. From the outside,
Wow.
they looked like a normal couple, as Anna would occasionally appear in some of his TikToks. But as much as he gained online, his personal life was spiraling. His mental state was becoming unstable, and his relationship with Anna was suffering because of it. In October of 2021, she told Ali it was over. She wanted a divorce. For Ali, that wasn't an option. Instead of accepting the breakup, he spiraled. He refused to believe it was real. He became obsessed with Anna's every move. He stalked her, tracked her, and listened in on her private conversations, as without her knowing, he installed a hidden tracking device on her iPad. Through it, he could hear everything she said, every conversation, every plan she made, and every person she talked to. It was all being monitored, and in Ali's mind, he was building a case against her, convincing himself that she was betraying him. As the days passed, his paranoia deepened. Though he wasn't just her, he was furious. He felt abandoned, humiliated, and powerless. And that's when his obsession took its darkest turn. On October 21st, 2021, Ali was listening in on Anna once again. This time, what he heard shattered whatever was left of his sanity. Another man was with her in her apartment. In that moment, something inside Ali snapped. He muttered to himself, "I caught her. I finally caught her," several times. He wasn't thinking anymore, he was purely acting. Fueled by his rage and jealousy, he grabbed his gun and made a decision that would destroy everything. And then just hours later, tragedy struck. Ali stormed into the Spire San Diego luxury apartments, riding up the elevator to the 35th floor, where Anna lived. When he reached the door, he didn't hesitate. He forced his way inside. Inside the apartment, Anna was with 29-year-old Rayburn Barron. He wasn't a stranger. He was someone Anna had known for years. But in Ali's mind, he was the enemy, the man who had stolen his wife. Without words, Ali pulled out his gun and opened fire. The first shot hit Rayburn, ending his life instantly. Anna screamed, but there was nowhere she could run. In the next moment, Ali turned the gun on her and ended her life. It was over in mere seconds. He had taken the lives of the woman he once loved and the man he believed had taken her from him. Ali then got in his car and started driving. Then he made a phone call to his mother. In a matter-of-fact tone, he simply told her, By now, Anna's neighbors had already called 911, and it didn't take long for the police to piece together what had happened and put out an alert. Ali was on the move, and officers were closing in, though he wouldn't make it far. Not long after leaving the apartment, police caught up with him on Interstate 805. His car was pulled over, and officers surrounded him. He didn't fight, and he didn't try to escape. Ali was taken into custody without resistance, the gun still in his vehicle. By the time the news broke, the internet was in shock. The same man who had once made people laugh with his funny videos had now become the face of a brutal double murder. But the deepest impact was felt by the person who had no way of understanding what had happened: Ali and Anna's 5-year-old daughter. In an instant, her mother was gone. She would grow up not just without Anna, but with the horrifying reality that her father, the man who was supposed to love and protect her, was the one responsible for taking her away. There was no way to explain to a child why her world had been shattered. In the months that followed, Ali Abulaban sat in a courtroom, no longer an internet personality, but a man on trial for a double murder. He pleaded not guilty, insisting that he had acted in a moment of uncontrollable rage. But the evidence obviously told a very different story. In May of 2024, a jury found him guilty of both counts of first-degree murder. Then, in September of 2024, he was sentenced to 2
Why does everything have to happen in May?
consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. Social media can turn everyday people into stars overnight. Jonte Collier and Eric Dodds were one such a couple. Their TikTok videos gained them over 800,000 followers, as many admired them not just for their personalities, but for the representation they brought to the LGBT community. Though the same people who built their brand on love were hiding something much darker, something
Wait, I think I know this story.
that none of their followers saw coming. At first, the changes were subtle. Their uploads slowed down, and the usual light-hearted energy in their videos felt somewhat different. Some followers noticed, but most scrolled past without a second thought. Then, one day, their content would stop altogether. What happened? The answer isn't just surprising, it is deeply disturbing. On August 10th, 2022, Jonte was arrested in Georgia. At first, the details were scarce. News outlets reported that he'd been taken into custody, but for what? No one knew for sure yet. It didn't seem real. Fans obviously scrambled for answers, hoping it was some kind of mistake. Then just as people were starting to wrap their heads around Jonte's arrest, something even stranger started happening. Eric took to social media to defend Jonte. He was emotional, adamant that his partner was innocent.
No, he has not done anything to no one. Y'all know John will not harm a soul. He's the most free-spirited, caring person that I know.
To him, this was just a mistake, something that would soon be cleared up. He reassured their fans that Jonte would be home soon, but that never happened, because just days later, Eric was arrested too. The same man who had been pleading for Jonte's innocence was now in handcuffs himself. 2 arrests on the same case, same sudden disappearance from social media. On August 1st, 2022, in Rossville, Georgia, a man named Dakota Bradshaw had been shot inside his home. Witnesses reported seeing 2 vehicles speeding away from the scene, a red truck and a blue Dodge Challenger. Bradshaw was rushed to Arlinger Hospital, but it was too late. He didn't survive. As police pieced together the evidence, their investigation led them to Jonte Collier and Eric Dodds. On August 8th of 2022, a murder warrant was issued for Jonte, and just 2 days later, he was arrested in Huntsville, Alabama. At that moment, many assumed the case was closed, but on August 15th, investigators took it a step further. A second murder warrant was issued, this time for Eric. The very next day, he would be arrested. Their fans were in complete shock. Over the next following months, more details would emerge. While authorities did not publicly disclose a specific motive, the prosecution had enough evidence to charge both men with felony murder. Even after the convictions, many questions remained unanswered. What exactly happened between Dakota Bradshaw and the 2 TikTokers before the shooting? And what was the motive? Authorities never publicly confirmed these details, leaving room for continued speculation. But one fact remained clear. Now, with both men sentenced to life in prison, their time in the spotlight had come to a permanent end. By May of 2023, after standing trial, both Collier and Dodds were found guilty of felony murder. They were both sentenced to life in prison. The TikTok couple, who had once been known for their playful videos and seemingly perfect relationship, would now spend the rest of their lives behind bars. We're now on level 5 of the iceberg. Louise Cam was a successful businesswoman living in Hertfordshire in England. At
I know this story.
71 years old, she had built a comfortable life managing rental properties, including a £1.3 million house in Barnet and a shop with 3 flats in Willesden. That's when she met Kusai Al-Jundi, a 25-year-old chef who worked in a restaurant in Willesden. He was charming, confident, and always had a way with words. He talked about his wealth, his powerful connections, and how he could make things happen. It wasn't before long he introduced Louise to a new business proposal, one that seemed too good to pass up. Kusai claimed to have a wealthy girlfriend named Anna, who was eager to invest in property. According to him, she was ready to buy both of Louise's properties for £4.6 million, offering a fast, off-the-books deal that would benefit everyone involved. Louise had been considering selling, and if Kasai was telling the truth, this would be an easy and profitable transaction. But she wasn't dealing with an ordinary buyer. Unbeknownst to her, Kasai was not the businessman he claimed to be. He had no money, no high-profile connections, and no intention of following through on the deal. Behind the scenes, something much darker was taking shape. To make his plan work, Kasai brought in Mohammed El Aboud, a 28-year-old delivery driver. As a man in a difficult financial situation, Mohammed was willing to do whatever it took to help his friend secure the deal. Together, they made sure everything was in its place. On July 26, 2021, Louise was invited to Kasai's home in Barnet, where she expected to finalize the property transfer. She had no reason to suspect anything was wrong, though once she arrived, at some point during the visit, Mohammed launched a violent attack. He strangled Louise with a hairdryer cord in a cold-blooded act. With Louise dead, Kasai and Mohammed now had a major problem. The plan had always been to take her properties, but now they had a body to hide. Their solution was equally as disturbing. They stuffed Louise into a wheelie bin right there at the property. Instead of disposing of it immediately, they left her there, hidden from view, as they put the rest of their scheme into motion. Over the next 48 hours, Kasai attempted to fake Louise's presence. Using her phone, he sent text messages to her friends, family, and business contacts, pretending she was still alive. He told her sons that she had gone away with her friend and wouldn't be available for a while. But deception can only go so far. Louise's family and friends immediately grew suspicious. The messages just didn't sound like her, and the way they were written felt off. They were too vague and too unlike the direct and business-minded woman they knew. Meanwhile, Kasai and Mohammed weren't acting like men trying to cover up a crime. In fact, they were celebrating. Rather than lying low, Mohammed filmed himself dancing with his girlfriend in one of Louise's properties and posted the video to TikTok. He had literally just committed a murder, and now he was smiling for the camera. In another clip, he shows off his brand new car, which of course also belonged to Louise. Mohammed was playing the role of a wealthy, carefree young man, pretending he had come into money through legitimate means. In reality, he was flaunting items he didn't have and living on borrowed time. Kasai, meanwhile, was busy trying to secure his prize. Earlier that month, he had convinced Louise to sign a lasting power of attorney document, which basically gives him control over her financial affairs. He also obtained signed property transfer forms, which would allow him to take ownership of her properties without paying a single penny. In Kasai's mind, everything was set, and with her now out the way as they planned, he wasted no time to sell her properties. He contacted an associate, claiming that Louise had already handed them over to him, and began looking for buyers. He thought he had pulled off the perfect crime, but the cracks were already forming in his grand plan. Louise's family was asking too many questions. Her properties were also still legally tied to her name, and the videos that Mohammed was taking in her properties was about to bring everything crashing down. On July 28, 2021, 2 days after Louise was last seen, her family had reported her missing. The police immediately launched an investigation, retracing her last known movements. It didn't take long for them to zero in on the people she had last been in contact with, Mohammed and Kasai. When questioned by the authorities, Kasai tried to maintain his facade. He repeated the story he had been pushing through the text messages, that Louise had gone away on a trip and that he had nothing to do with her disappearance. But detectives simply weren't buying it. By this point, the reckless social media activity, particularly the TikTok videos, had raised suspicions. As the pressure mounted, the truth unraveled. Just days after her disappearance, police discovered Louise Cam's body. She was found stuffed inside that same wheelie bin, though she had been moved to Wood End Road in Harrow, where it was concealed under garden waste. Mohammed El Aboud and Kasai Al Jundi were arrested and charged with Louise's murder. In 2022, the pair were each sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 35 years. In the quiet suburbs of Las Vegas, 16-year-old Sierra Hulseth and 18-year-old Aaron Guerrero thought they had found something special, something no one else could understand. They were young, in love, and inseparable, but their love had one major problem: Sierra's father, Daniel Hulseth. Daniel didn't approve of Aaron in the slightest. He saw the relationship as reckless and dangerous. Maybe he thought Sierra was too young to be so deeply involved with someone older. Whatever his reasons, he made one thing very clear: Sierra was forbidden from seeing Aaron. For most teenagers, a breakup like this would be heartbreaking but temporary. Parents set rules, and kids eventually move on. But Sierra and Aaron weren't like most teenagers. Behind closed doors and over text messages, the two teens started discussing something unthinkable. What if Daniel wasn't around anymore? What if they didn't have to hide, lie, or sneak around? What if they could just make him disappear? It might have started like a fantasy, an angry thought said aloud, but as the days passed, the idea stopped sounding impossible. It started sounding like a real plan. And unlike the way most people fantasize about extreme ideas but never act on them, Sierra and Aaron took their dark thoughts one step further. They began researching. They talked about what they would need to do. The planning wasn't rushed, it was calculated. This wasn't a crime of passion, a sudden moment of anger turning deadly. This was something different, something colder. Their plan involved not just killing Daniel, but making sure no one would ever know they were responsible. They would cover their tracks, escape together, and start a new life far away. The details of the plan aren't all public, but what we do know is chilling. They discussed ways to get rid of evidence. They planned how they'd clean up afterwards, and most disturbingly, they talked about what life would be like once Daniel was out of the picture, as if his life was just a problem that needed to be solved. At this point, it was no longer just a theory or wild teenage idea. They had made up their minds, and all that was left was to put their plan into motion. On April 9th, 2021, that's exactly what they did. Daniel Hulseth had no idea what was coming. He was at home, likely thinking about everyday concerns, work, bills, his daughter's future. But as he went about his evening, Sierra and Aaron were waiting for the right moment to strike. The attack was brutal. Daniel was ambushed with a knife by his own daughter and Aaron. Reports later revealed that he had suffered at least 70 different wounds. The two teens didn't just kill Daniel, they made sure there was no chance he could survive. The attack wasn't clean, quick, or quiet, but even after the murder, their plan wasn't over. They had another problem: the crime scene. Sierra and Aaron took their next step. They tried to set the house on fire to destroy any trace of what they had done. Flames began to spread throughout the house, but despite their efforts, the fire didn't do enough to cover up the crime. Security footage later captured the teens at a nearby store buying bleach, gloves, and other cleaning supplies, attempting to erase their involvement, but no amount of cleaning could undo what they had done. With Daniel's body lying in his burning home, Sierra and Aaron didn't panic. They didn't break down. Instead, they moved forward with their plan. They emptied Daniel's bank account, withdrawing thousands of dollars to fund their escape. Then they packed their bags and disappeared, thinking they had left no trace behind. But what you're probably wondering is what this has to do with TikTok. Well, what they did next was probably the most disturbing part of the entire case. Instead of laying low, staying quiet, or showing any sign of guilt, Sierra and Aaron did the unthinkable. They recorded a video. In the short TikTok, we see the two teenagers together, smiling and laughing.
Day 3 after murdering somebody.
Wow! Don't put that on the camera.
It was worth it.
And no bleeding this time.
Mm-hmm.
We got through that.
The video became one of the many pieces of evidence in the case, as it was proof they didn't see what they had done as a mistake. They saw it as a shared experience, something that bonded them even further. Meanwhile, back in Las Vegas, authorities were quickly piecing things together. The fire hadn't completely destroyed the crime scene, and it didn't take long for investigators to realize that Daniel Hulseth's death wasn't an accident. With the evidence stacking up, police launched a manhunt for Sierra and Aaron. The two had taken off, traveling across states in an attempt to disappear, but their freedom wouldn't last long. Just 3 days later, on April 13th, 2021, the couple was found and arrested in Salt Lake City, Utah. In early 2023, both Sierra and Aaron took plea deals to avoid a trial. They pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and arson. By taking the deal, they avoided the possibility of a harsher sentence, but their punishment was still severe. On April 8th, 2023, Sierra was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison, and a month later, in March, Aaron received the same sentence, 20 years to life. Nicola Priest's TikTok account seemed like a window into the life of a loving young mother. She posted videos that painted a picture of happiness, dancing, smiling, and lips Syncing to popular songs. Her
I have a
daughter,
bad feeling about
Kaylee
this one.
Jade, often appeared in these videos, laughing and playing along, just like any other carefree toddler. But behind closed doors, the reality was much darker than anyone watching could have imagined. Social media is built on appearances. People purposely show the best parts of their lives. But those watching her TikTok videos didn't see what was happening behind the screen. They didn't hear the cries of a 3-year-old being mistreated. They didn't see the text messages she sent to her boyfriend, Callum Redfern, joking about punishing Kaylee Jade when she misbehaved. They didn't know that the same woman filming playful TikToks was also ignoring her daughter's pain. On the night of August 8th, 2020, the illusion of happiness Nicola Priest had crafted online shattered completely. Sometime between the evening and early hours of the next morning, something horrific happened inside her apartment in Solihull, England. Her 3-year-old daughter, Kaylee Jade, suffered fatal injuries. Injuries so severe that experts later compared them to those of a child in a high-speed car crash. At 11:17 a.m. the next day, Nicola dialed 999. Her voice was panicked, and she told the operator that her daughter wasn't breathing. Paramedics arrived at the flat within minutes, but it was already too late. Kaylee Jade's body was lifeless, showing clear signs of a brutal attack. It was clear that Nicola had been physical with her. Despite the extreme circumstances, Nicola and her boyfriend Callum acted as though they had no idea what had happened. They told paramedics that Kaylee Jade had simply fallen asleep and never woken up, but doctors who examined her body obviously knew the truth. As investigators combed through the scene, disturbing details began to emerge. Neighbors reported hearing loud noises and thuds coming from the apartment the night before. Some even recalled hearing Kaylee Jade crying. Then, the autopsy confirmed what detectives feared. Kaylee Jade had died from blunt force trauma. She had been subjected to ongoing abuse, with previous injuries showing she had suffered long before that fatal night. And as police continued their investigation, they found more damning evidence. Messages between Nicola and Callum laughing about punishing the toddler when she didn't behave. Nicola had presented herself as the devoted mother on TikTok, but in reality, she had failed Kaylee Jade in almost every way possible. The little girl who once appeared in her videos was now gone, and the truth about what happened inside that apartment was finally beginning to unravel. Nicola and Callum both sat in court, accused of causing or allowing the death of a child. From the start, it was clear that neither of them wanted to take responsibility. Instead, they turned on each other. Nicola claimed that Callum had been the one to inflict the fatal injuries, while Callum insisted that he had only arrived at the apartment after the abuse had already taken place. But the evidence told a very different story, one where both were guilty. The court heard about the disturbing messages Nicola and Callum had exchanged in the days leading up to Kaylee Jade's death. These texts revealed that both of them had been frustrated with the toddler and had joked about punishing her. One message from Callum even suggested that they should, quote, boot Kaylee Jade when she misbehaved. The prosecution argued that these messages showed a pattern of mistreatment and a complete lack of care for the child's well-being. As the trial progressed, the jury saw the stark difference between the image Nicola Priest had created online and the reality of her behavior as a mother. Clips from her TikTok were played in court, showing her smiling and singing just weeks before her daughter's death. But those videos meant nothing when compared to the
What's with all these bad parent and stuff, bro?
brutal evidence of what had really happened. In August 2021, the verdict was finally delivered. Nicola Priest was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 15 years in prison. Callum Redfern was also convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 14 years. But what makes this case even worse is what Nicola did after her daughter had already died. In the days following Kaylee Jade's death, but before her arrest, Nicola continued posting TikTok videos as if nothing had happened. Instead of mourning, she kept uploading videos of herself dancing to songs and posing for the camera. In one video, she performed a dance routine to the song I Wanna Be Your Lady, with no sign of sadness or remorse. These videos became a key piece of outrage when the case went to trial. Many people couldn't comprehend how a mother who had just lost her child in such a violent way could carry on as if nothing had happened at all. And that concludes today's video. If you want something else to watch or listen to, here's a video of mine that YouTube thinks you'll enjoy. Thanks for watching.
Alright, thank you guys for watching. Bye bye.